we're going to practice writing some letters that are kind of tricky to connect. So these are pairs of letters. There's two letters that connect at the midpoint. Normally we'd start A over here at 2 on the clock, so it's tricky because we are going to end here. R, we normally start at the baseline. S starts at the baseline. T. So we're going to go through these connections and practice them, and I'm going to explain how to make them because I don't want them to trip you up when you go to write a word. All right, OA. We start 2 on the clock and go around to make our O, close it up, end with a dip, and then we use an over curve to go over the top of the A to 2. We stop, we go back around like we normally make an A. So again, we're going to make our O. The first letter is never going to be the tricky one. It's going to be the second one. We have a dip. Okay, then we have an over curve over the top of A. Freeze. Now we're at 2 on the clock. Then we just make our A. Okay. It's very important that this is in the middle, not down here. Okay, and this is one of those times when going in the correct direction is going to be really crucial, very important. Okay, you can practice. I think you have room for several more. Don't stop just because I'm stopping. I'm going to go on to OR. Just to remind you, this is what R normally looks like, but when we join it with another letter at the midpoint, we leave off this. So OR, or, we start here and then we just go on with our slant line down straight to the baseline and end with a small upswing. We do our O and our dip, slant down straight to the baseline, end with a small upswing. You might even have this phonogram in your name. Alright, and if this one is tricking you or giving you a hard time, go ahead and flip over to the back of your paper and see if you can work on it a few more times on some of those blank pages. The next one is OS. So S is normally like this, but when it has an O in front of it, it's going to start here at the midpoint. So once again, this part of the letter is going to be left off. So we'll do our O, and then we're at the midpoint. We've done our dip. Oops. We're going to pull straight down to the baseline, curve to the left. This time we don't have that line to tell us where to stop, but just curve around to 8, just like we're used to, and then trace back out this small upswing. This one's not a phonogram, but it's still very common. There's lots of words that have OS in them. O, upswing, pull a straight line almost down to the baseline. We get to 4, curve around to 8, trace back around to 4, and end with a small upswing. Make your O and your dip, pull a straight line almost to the baseline, curve from 4 to 8, trace back from 8 to 4, and end with a small upswing. Take your time, let your hands learn the movements. Straight down, 4 to 8, 8 to 4, small upswing. And you will have it in no time. Alright, the T is not quite as weird. It's just leaving off the beginning, the little upswing that goes to the midpoint. So, make your O, dip, and then from here we're just going to keep going straight up, almost to the line above, straight down to the baseline, and end with a small upswing. Okay, just make sure that we don't have any big spread out T's. I'm going to go straight up. We're going to trace back down. And with your dip on your O, up almost to the line above, trace back down to the baseline and end with a small upswing. Trace back down to the baseline and end with a small upswing. Alright, let's do O-E now, like O as in toe. So normally an E looks like this, just like in the other letters. We will miss out on this short upswing as we join it to the O. O, and then the dip, and then from here we're just going to make our loop come down and end with an upswing. O, dip, and then loop back around to the left, end with a small upswing. Started to write OT and my E got very skinny. O, dip, E. And honestly, when you do it this way, it really looks like a print E. The next one is OL. So once again, it's just losing the beginning of its upswing. O, dip, L. O, dip, up almost to the line above, curve to the left, straight down to the baseline and end with a small upswing. O, dip, almost to the line above, curve back to the left, straight down to the baseline, and end with a small upswing. Okay. Now, there are several more of these, but we have lots of letters that end at the midpoint, so I'm going to choose a different page to start. I'm just going to pick a couple off of this one. So we didn't do any of the I, so I'm going to start right here with B-I. These are all connections that begin with a B. So we're going to do our lowercase b. Okay, and here we are at the midpoint. We have done our dip. We're going to come up just a little bit, straight down to the baseline and end with a small up curve. Okay, so lowercase b, dip, up to the midpoint, straight down to the baseline and end with a small upswing, and then dot your I. Lowercase b, dip, up to the baseline, up to the midpoint, straight down to the baseline and end with a small upswing. Let's see if I can say it correctly. Lowercase b, dip, up to the midpoint, straight down to the baseline, end with a small upswing. Make sure your B is not getting too open. Make sure it's coming close. It's round. It shouldn't look like a U. All right, we'll get to practice it double here because we're going to do B, B, as in bubble or rabbit. So here's our B. From here, we're going to go up almost to the line above, curve back to the left, straight down, and then we're going to curve around to 2 on the clock and end with a dip. There's our B. From here, we're going to go up almost to the line above, curve back around, straight down to the baseline, curve around to 2 on the clock, and end with a dip. Straight back down to the baseline, curve around to 2 on the clock, and end with a dip. Okay, let's do BU. B, okay, now we're at the midpoint. We're going to go up to the midline, straight down to the baseline, curve around from 8 to 4, up to the midline, straight down to the baseline, and end with a small upswing. So if we put this one, BU, BB, and BL together, we'd almost have bubble. There's our B on our dip, up to the midpoint, straight down to the baseline. Curve from 8 to 4, up to the midpoint, straight down to the baseline, end with a small upswing. Keep going with that BU. Practice it until you are satisfied that it is perfect, and then practice a couple more to make sure your hand has got that movement down. When I see your pictures, I want to see you practicing it several times. It's going to take, think of how many times you had to write your letters to learn how to write and print. You had to write them so many times. Okay, I would like to see you filling up your lines. Remember, we're not using our eraser. If we make a mistake, put a little check mark on it so we all know that you see that mistake and move on. We'll do better the next time. This is BY. It's very similar to BU, just has the tail. So we're going to do our B, end with our dip, up to our midpoint, straight down to the baseline, curve around from 8 to 4, up to the midpoint, straight down below the baseline, curve to the left, and close it up. Make sure the tail of that Y is the length of this whole thing. Don't stop it down here. Don't do this. Okay? B, Y, this word is by. Alright, now we have a couple of words to practice. You have the words baby, blobs, bubble, brick, bibs, and bell. I'm going to write each of them once, but you are going to practice them 3 or 4 times and fill up your line. Baby, blobs, bubble, brick, brick, bibs, bell, okay, that's gonna be our practice for today. Tomorrow we'll do a couple more connections at the midpoint.